everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're very welcome to our preview show, and we're looking ahead to the big game this weekend. It's Armagh and Mayo in the Athletic Grounds on Sunday at 3:30. Joining me to look forward to it is Billy Joe Padden, former Armagh and Mayo player. So Billy Joe knows all about these two teams. Billy Joe, welcome back. You were on last year previewing this game as well. And I suppose that was round 4. Armagh were unbeaten at that stage. This is round 2, and Armagh have got up and running with a win against Monaghan. Mayo also unbeaten, obviously, with their draw against Galway. It's a huge 2 points in offer here, Billy Joe, simply because there's a break after this, so it's a huge chance to get another 2 points on the board for both teams.
Yes, for sure. Delighted to be back on first. But it's a big opportunity. And I think when you're in Armagh's situation, you've gone away. You've got a good win against a team that you know very well. They know you very well in Monaghan, local derby. Sometimes those games, the form book can go out the window in those games, particularly in Ulster where teams play each other a lot. But I think there's one thing that you've noticed maybe in Armagh in the last couple, particularly in the last 2 seasons, they seem to be doing better in those Ulster derby games. So that looks good for what we all want to see Armagh doing, which is going back and winning an Ulster title. So that they're on the right track in that regard. And beating Monaghan was another example of that. But again, looking ahead to this Mayo game, it's a big opportunity for them to put 4 points on the board, go into the break. And then you're really looking after that. If you're Cian McGeeney after that, if there's anything you want to experiment with in the league that you think may help you in the championship, you have that license to do that because you have that bit of wriggle room that you're not going to be scraping for points. If you have a player that's injured, there's no need to risk them in these early stages, no need to rush anyone back, take any unnecessary risks. So getting to 4 points for Armagh would be huge. And similar, it's the same thing for Mayo. You get 1 point out of a home game against Galway, which you're happy enough with because Galway were strong and looked good. But you're going away to a very difficult venue in the Athletic Grounds against a team in Armagh. We'll probably get into it later on, who probably have the edge in some areas of the field over Mayo. But either way, I think it's going to be a game to look forward to.
I think it's going to be it's going to be a packed house first and foremost, Billy Joe. And I know I said on the podcast after the Monaghan game, make sure to go and get your tickets as soon as you can because they're going to be scarce. It's Mayo have a good support. Armagh are really, there's a buzz in Armagh about this team. There's a lot of excitement. Like there's going to be a great atmosphere even before the ball is thrown in on Sunday.
For sure. Well, I always say that I was very lucky to play for both counties because I don't think there's any 2 counties in Ireland that are better supported. When you consider, I don't know what the attendance will be. What's the capacity of the Athletic Grounds these days? But there was 14,000 at
15,000 possibly in the Athletic Grounds.
Yeah, and there was 14,000 at the Mayo Galway game. I think the fact that it's a bit later on a Sunday evening, 3:30 might put off some Mayo crowd traveling. But then again, the fact that it's a bank holiday in the south the day after, so who knows? Loads of Mayo supporters might make a weekend of it, or mightn't be that worried about getting home late on a Sunday night when they have a Monday off. So you're right, tickets will be scarce. But again, I think you look at it from both sets of players, that they're both used to playing in those really good league games that have an atmosphere. And we've all gone to league games where feels like there's 3 men and a dog watching the game, but that's definitely not the case when Armagh or Mayo are at home.
And Billy Joe, I suppose before we get into this weekend, Armagh had Aaron Kieran on the show the other day, so me and him sort of went through the ins and outs of the Monaghan game. But I suppose just initially to get up and running, no matter how well you play or how badly you play, the first game's just about winning and getting out of the road and getting 2 points and getting home again, isn't it?
It is, and particularly as well, the mistake by Beggan, it was nearly 2 mistakes in one play because he had an opportunity to get back at it. It kind of got Armagh into the game because they were a bit cagey. It looked like the first day out, for the first 20 minutes or so. But then Armagh seemed to get into a bit of a rhythm, and you see then that, the experienced players they have, the forwards that they have, the, players that are really good footballers, Stephen Campbell, Rory Grugan, we all know what Rian O'Neill's capable of. Mernon, Aidan Nugent as well has played a lot of football. He's the sort of player you can rely on to do the right thing at the right time. So they have a bunch of players there that you feel comfortable with will make the right decision. And as they got into the game more, you always felt them getting stronger. Sometimes you worry about Armagh. You just think, can they keep the scores out? Can they be disciplined enough in defence not to give away frees? But they did just enough. And I know there's more in them. I know they can be better. But I think it was good to see. After a poor start, you sort yourself out and you get the win away from home. You can't ask for much more than that in the first day out.
I suppose Mayo then, Billy Joe there, we're probably only judging them on one game, and obviously with new management in, Kevin McStay, Stephen Rochford, I think Liam McHale's in with them as well. Star-studded line-up in the management team, but have you seen a change? As I say, we're only judging it on Saturday night against Galway, but any change in playing style, or did you notice anything?
Very difficult to notice at the outset. I think, which was nice to see. And I think this is probably the most important thing for Kevin McStay in the first day out, was you saw positivity, you saw energy, you saw intensity. And that's the way Mayo want to play football. That's when they're at their best, when the game is kind of end to end. That's the sort of players to have, and Kevin recognises that. But to notice any key difference in the way they were playing, it wasn't noticeable as such. I think in many ways, you look at Mayo very much have their main forward at the minute is Ryan O'Donoghue. So getting the ball into him, and he's good, and getting the ball into him as often as they can will be a huge thing for them. And any team that come up against Mayo know they have to shut him down. In the first half of the last day against Galway, they didn't get the ball to him often enough. And then they missed a lot of opportunities early on, particularly dropping the ball into the goalkeeper's hands. So that's an area that they have to improve on. But there's no doubt in Ryan O'Donoghue and James Carr in particular, they're very dangerous for goals. So both those players are really, really good goal scorers. And I think it was a positive as well that Cillian O'Connor comes on then late on and clips over a nice point, and it's a positive just to have him available in the league for Mayo. They're going to be very, very strong around the middle of the field, whoever they put out there. Jordan Flynn is getting better and better. He's a great athlete. He's physical. He's aggressive. Much like Matty Ruan, can get up and down the field, really good athlete. And then you've Diarmuid O'Connor, another player that's a lot of experience but really full energy. So you don't have any worries about that area of the field. Without Paddy Durcan, they don't have that dynamic line breaker from the half-back line that Mayo seem to just have a conveyor belt off. And then you lose Oisin Mullen to Australia, you lose Lee Keegan to retirement. So that area of the field is totally changed for Mayo. And that's something that, probably was a bit evident against Galway, but maybe even more so against this Sunday against Armagh, when you consider that was probably the area where kind of won the game for Mayo against Armagh last year. Like Paddy Durcan, everyone remembers that move that Paddy Durcan finished off to kind of win the game in the Hyde Park for Mayo against Armagh. It was a really sucker punch for Armagh, really, probably the better team on the day. But then again, I know I mentioned a lot of the Armagh forwards that I have a lot of faith in, that I think are really, really, you could make a case that the Armagh 6 forwards that Armagh can put out, whoever they put out, are as good as any forwards in the country. And that's particularly if you can get one of those, and particularly Rian. If you can get Rian on a good day, and then you see all the abilities, the other players, their ability to chip in with 2 points here, 2 points there, a goal, whether it's Aidan Nugent, Soupy, or Rory Grugan, Andrew Murnan, even Turbert, that's huge. And it's an area where they'll have a significant advantage on Mayo, because you look at the Mayo defence without Lee Keegan, without Oisin Mullen, without Brendan Harrison, it's very inexperienced. Mayo played, Rory Brickenden, McBrien, and Jack Coyne the last day, and they're decent players, but they're a bit unproven. So it's a real big test for them in the athletic grounds against those good Armagh forwards.
Yeah, well, that's an area of the field I really wanted to talk to you about, was Mayo's defence, because obviously you mentioned them, like Mullen and Keegan are gone, O'Hora's injured, I think Durcan's injured as well.
Mm-hmm.
Brendan Harrison, I forgot all about Brendan Harrison. I think he's just had a nightmare a couple of years, hasn't he, with injuries?
Yeah.
So I suppose looking back on Saturday night, Galway, we got the first goal off a mismatch. Matthew Tierney sneaked inside. I think it was actually his name escapes me now, the Mayo corner forward.
Aidan Orme, it was
Aidan Orme. He was back marking him, and I think Comer got a mark in the first half as well, just size difference. So physically, do you think can Armagh challenge this Mayo defence and get on top of them, particularly the likes of Rian and Andrew Murnan on the edge of the square?
Yeah, I think that's it. Physicality will be a factor. I think if you look at two of the, McBrien and Brickenden are quite big. They're like 6 foot and they're good athletes. They're just not that experienced, and you'd wonder about them have that one-on-one marking ability that you need with some of those players that can go left and right for Armagh. So many of those Armagh forwards can kick with both feet. I think the Comer's hard to handle, and he looked very sharp. And Hessian, who's probably the most experienced Mayo defender in terms of a man marking sense, was picking him up, and Comer just had a height advantage on him, and was able to catch those balls clean. I think the goal that you mentioned as well was clever play by Matthew Tierney to recognise he was on a mismatch and then find himself in on the edge of the square. Still think it was a shot for a point that just happened to drop short. Yeah. But credit to Tierney, he's in the right place at the right time. Orm obviously either didn't try and could make the switch on his way in with a more suitable defender. There mightn't have been anyone there that could have been able to switch tasks with him. And then, so he probably could have attacked that ball better. But at the same time, Colm Reap and Goals, who had a good game otherwise, probably wasn't quick enough to get out and be physical and try and push that ball out, because in those sort of situations, look, if it was down the other end, and Ethan Rafferty was in goals, Matthew Tierney would have known all about it. If David Clark, that had played in goals for years, was there, he would have known all about it, because they would have been climbing all over the back of him to punch the ball out. And sometimes you just have to be physical in those situations and get off the ground early and get up there and make contact with that ball.
And obviously, so much stuff surrounding Mayo. Billy Joe was the loss of Lee Keegan retiring, Oisin Mullen going to Australia. But O'Donoghue coming back, Cillian O'Connor got a half the other night. I think Kevin McStay said Tommy Conroy is getting there. So while the defence, maybe you're still a bit exposed, or waiting for a few boys to come back into the defence, such a boost to have in your forward line if O'Donoghue, Cillian O'Connor and Tommy Conroy are all coming back soon.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Tommy Conroy will be a player that we're all eager to get back, because I think when any of the Mayo supporters saw the possibilities of Cillian O'Connor getting that bit older, all the scores he's got now, he's still something to offer. That's absolutely clear. But you saw that Ryan O'Donoghue and Tommy Conroy gave you something totally different. Tommy Conroy has that blistering straight line speed, acceleration, whereas Ryan is fast, but he's more quickness. It's more about left and right and acceleration through a gap and ability to get a goal. And you thought that if those two players could work together for a period, well, then you have something totally different and something dynamic and something that you can really build upon. So that's positive. There is sort of rumours around that maybe even Tommy Conroy might play some part in Sigerson. So that'd be a real positive for him coming back and playing, maybe middle of the league for Mayo. But I think this Sunday will be too soon for him. Maybe that's just as well for the Armagh defence, because he is very, very fast, very direct, and is capable of doing some very, very good things. Durkin at the same time as well, it's about that speed, that acceleration, that driving out of the half-back line. Not only that, he's the most experienced defender you have. He's a player that the other defenders will look to, because people have seen Paddy Durkin go to Croke Park, Mark Jack McCaffrey, a player of his quality, and have a great game on him, and that gives the players around you confidence. Never mind. So it'll be absolutely critical for Mayo to get those two players back in the group and back on the field to help out.
On midfield, Billy Joe, Armagh, I suppose they're down a couple of regulars, the likes of Ben Creeley and Kieran Mackin, seemed to be the midfield pair in most of the league last year, and now Grimley obviously in there too. He's just making his way back from injury. So it was Stephen Campbell and Stephen Sheridan the other night, but Mayo have such a huge physically imposing, powerful midfield pairing in Ruan and Flynn, and then Dermot O'Connor coming into that as well. That's probably a place where Mayo are going to hope that they have the edge.
Yeah, I think so. Look, Stephen Sheridan and Stephen Campbell are really good athletes, can cover the ground, and particularly in Sheridan's case, really high work rate. I think that, and we all know what Stefan's ability is in terms of driving forward with the ball, going on solo runs, scoring spectacular points. So one of those Mayo midfielders are going to have to keep an eye on him if that's the way Armagh line out. It'd probably be a case where Jordan Flynn would track him, because Jordan against Galway, particularly in the second half of the last, it had some great defensive interventions. But you're right, it's an area where Mayo have an awful lot of running power, physicality to win breaking ball, to put tackles in all over the field. And it's kind of that three-man effort. There's any one case, it could be one of them could be deeper than the other. Probably one area where they have disappointed would be on long kickouts. They haven't, between the three of them, they just haven't found their comfort level in terms of sometimes you just have to go up there and be physical with a ball in the air. It cost them a couple of years ago against Tyrone, if everyone remembers, in the All-Ireland final, where a couple of long kickouts, they defended them badly, let them get in over behind, and it cost a goal. It has been a problem as well, maybe against Galway, have been more physical around the middle of the field than in the championship game last year, particularly in the early stages. So that's one aspect of the game that those midfielders will have to improve on. But when you put it to just being on the ground, they're very, very strong. But in saying that, like, Sheridan's decent in the air. Like, Niall Grimley's as good a fielder pound for pound, if he gets space, as you would find, because for such a big man, he can get off the ground as well and has really good hands. So if he's a part to play in that area of it, it might be something that Armagh can turn into a strength, particularly when you consider that you've Ethan Rafferty back there with his left boot trying to find people long as well as short.
I suppose last year, Billy Joe, when you were on the show, we didn't know that Ethan Rafferty was going to be a goalkeeper. That wasn't known yet to the actual game. What have you made of Ethan Rafferty? Obviously, coming up and scoring a point the other night. His exploit last year, being biased, I thought he deserved an All-Star, but I'm only saying that as an Armagh man, obviously. What have you made of the whole sweeper keeper sort of pushing out that Ethan Rafferty has performed?
How much time do we have? How much time left? Because you could talk on this topic for a while. Well, I suppose I have history with Ethan in that I was part of an Armagh under 21 setup when he was under 21, so I know him very well. And actually, I have to give him credit. He's the man that finished my career, because in a championship game in Grange, I remember a ball came to me and I saw Ethan coming in to absolutely lay me out, and I said, I have to try and avoid this as good as I can. And in my cowardly nature of trying to get out of his way, I twisted my ankle, and that was the end of me, torn ligaments. So I blame Ethan Rafferty for all those things. I have great time for Ethan. I think he's a fantastic footballer. Seeing him stride up the field and slap that ball over the bar in the first half, there's no surprise in that. He's just got a big boom in left boot, and he's a great ability in that regard. I'm still unsure on the whole sweeper keeper experiment. It's clear that Kieran McGeeney finds value in it, because he's been looking for goalkeepers to do this for a number of years. I think he tried Paul Courtney in an Ulster Championship game in goals for Armagh. That must be 5 or 6 years ago.
2016, I think, Billy Joe. Yeah,
it's even longer again. So he's obviously tried to do that. I think that we have to be really clinical in our analysis of the goalkeeping position, and you have to weigh up everything. Ethan is much more comfortable on the ball if you ask him to come out than a normal goalkeeper, because he's an outfield player and he's played so much football out there. But at the same time, does he actually deal with every goalkeeping situation as good as maybe a full-time goalkeeper that has played all their things? I'm probably thinking maybe of, if you remember in the league game last year against Kerry, Clifford got a goal that Ethan probably was in a bad position, because he was trying to come out and maybe win the ball in the air when really he should have been readying himself to save a shot. But that's all part and parcel of him learning, and I have no doubt he will improve. Now, the one thing I am in favour of, I suppose, in the sweeper keeper, is that I think he was absolutely critical in the latter stages of the comeback against Galway last year, driving up the field. I think he won that free. So I think it is a positive to have a player like him for that situation in particular, that if you're 10 minutes down, and I suppose even if you're on top, you can know that you can kick the ball back to him and he'll be absolutely comfortable with it and he'll not do that daft. But really, if you're chasing the game, he does give you an extra body. If you're there to take a risk, and he can drive forward. He's a long range shooter, but he can drive forward, and that he hasn't done as much running as the outfield players have, so he'll have energy compared to the other players at that stage in the game. So I think there's a positive there. But I think the same with anything else. You have to be analytical in your viewpoint in terms of whether the sweeper keeper thing works for you. And I would not really encourage him to come forward that often early in the game, because I think sometimes as well it can have an effect on your defence, that if you feel that he's coming out there, that sometimes I feel that you're watching it and defenders are thinking they're kind of passing on the responsibility that they should have in terms of building play and getting forward themselves. But here, I'm here sitting watching on television. I'm not there training, and I'm sure Kieran McGeeney's given it much more thought than I have. But I suppose maybe to answer your question, I'm a bit undecided in terms of whether I'm in favour of it or against it. But if you're going to trial it and experiment with any player in the country, Ethan will probably be the fella you go to when you consider the attributes that he has.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm a bit on the fence with it too. Like when it goes well, it's great to see. Like, but it's just you're on the edge of your seat every time he comes up to the 4:45 where he did actually lose the ball the other night. He got turned
Yeah,
over. I
yeah.
suppose the thing on that, Billy Joe, is Armagh just have to foul straight away, don't they? If Ethan comes up the field and he loses it, you just have to stop the play.
You do like you can probably make the case that if the deepest defender knows then that if Ethan's 40 yards of field that he can drop back into goals, and that Ethan's a good enough footballer to go back and man mark anyone for a minute for that next play if you're scrambling back to defend. Obviously, if you foul, you run the risk of a black card because a panic sort of a foul in that situation, you might pull somebody down, or a yellow card, and you don't want to really be putting that in the minds of players. You want them to have, but you're right, it might be the right decision in any given moment. But I suppose that's probably why Ethan's probably the best sort of player to trial it with, because the last thing you want is a goalkeeper coming out that's not comfortable doing it, and he loses the ball because he's much more likely to lose the ball. He's just not in tune with the intensity of tackling at intercounty level. You even see somebody like Niall Morgan has come forward for Tyrone, and I believe he plays a lot of club football outfield. But even there's a big step up again to being able to play club football outfield and to be able to play inter-county football in terms of the how quickly players can converge on you to bottle you up and create a turnover. So the positive thing with Ethan is he has the experience of playing many games at that level outfield.
And I suppose just on last year, Billy Joe, it was probably one that got away and probably one that Armagh felt that they should have won. But it was Mayo's bench really that got them over the line. The likes of Kevin McLaughlin come on, scored a point. Paddy Durkin, as we mentioned, I think he got 2 points. Aidan O'Shea come on. There was somebody else, can't remember. There was four big names come on and won the game for Mayo. Do they still have that strength and depth, Billy Joe, with everybody that we've mentioned between stepping away and injuries? I know Killian O'Connor and Aidan O'Shea coming off the bench was huge the other night, but do they still have as strong a bench as they had last year?
No, but I don't think they have. But I think they will, whatever 15 they put out, there will be players that can make an impact from the bench. Like Aidan O'Shea is a really, really good sub to have. He comes on and you can slot him into a number of positions. If you're managing a lead, you can throw him in there behind midfield, and he's a great tackler and he'll use the ball well, and he will freeze and he'll slow up the game. I suppose if you're under pressure, you can play on the full forward line. I don't like to see him in there. I don't think it's the most effective place. Or you can just go out and do a midfield thing. No one needs to. I don't need to tell anyone what Killian O'Connor can do coming off the bench if they decide not to play him. But then you look at other players like Owen McLaughlin. Didn't have a great impact against Galway when he came off the bench last Saturday. But he's got searing pace, great ball carrying ability. He's had the ability to get in for goals on a counter attack and break. He's such a good athlete. He's a very dangerous sub coming off the bench. And I'd say the same for somebody like Paul Towie, who's a young forward who's, a lot of Mayo supporters are looking to see. He's not the biggest, he's not the strongest, but he is accurate. He's a free taker. And if he gets into a groove, he can kick points. And similarly, then you have a fellow like Darren McHale, who's a really clever footballer, not the quickest, not the biggest or the strongest. But if you're looking for a fella to come into your forward line and just keep possession late on, well, then he can do that job. So they're not as strong. There's no doubt they're not as strong as they were. But I still think that they have players that can be effective coming off the bench. But look, you could look at the Armagh bench, and I think that they've built up a really strong squad as well. So you have options to come in there as well. When you think about Grimley coming into that area of the field, Jason Duffy, fellas that have played a lot of football, that they're going to do the right thing when they get the ball in their hands.
I suppose, Billy Joe, the big question is who do you see coming out on top? It's look, we're basing it on one game, as I said. It's very early in the season, and it's hard to be making a prediction. But who do you see coming out on top?
I think you'd have to favour Armagh in this one. Home advantage. More of their bigger players are playing. Like Paddy Durkin's a huge player for Mayo. Killian O'Connor not starting. Tommy Conroy not starting. I don't expect them to start. Maybe Killian might, but Aidan O'Shea not starting. Some people might say that he's more effective coming off the bench in his current capacity at the minute. So I think he'll have an impact whatever way he does. But I'd be fearful that without Paddy Durkin, without some of that experience in the Mayo full back line, whether it's O'Hora, whether it's Brendan Harrison, I think that Armagh forward line could have a bit of joy, and I think they'll just be too strong in that area of the field, and I expect them to win maybe by 2 or 3 points. And it's a big opportunity for Armagh to show again that they've made another step from last year. To they did well against the Ulster team last year, if I remember rightly, in the league, and then it's how they can they get one over on Mayo after being defeated after the losing last season, and I think they can.
I hope you're right, Billy Joe. Hope take 2 or 3 point win definitely and get another 2 points on the board. That game obviously, as we say, it's Sunday at home at 3:30. So as I say, get your tickets in. It's going to be a bumper crowd and a really good atmosphere and a really good day. Hopefully for Armagh and Mayo, and we'll be back on Monday again. We'll have a review show and hopefully we'll be talking about another Armagh victory. Make sure to follow us on all our social media pages on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Like us on Spotify if that's where you listen to your podcast, and similarly, follow us on YouTube if that's where you get your podcast as well. Billy Joe, thanks very much for coming on. Really appreciate you coming on and giving us your thoughts.
No problem. Really enjoyed it. Good. It's one fixture that I should know plenty about anyway. So yeah, really enjoyed it.
Good man. Cheers, Billy Joe.